Welcome to today's Explainer. Look, if you are working in a community legal center or an advocacy organization right now, you already know the reality. We are looking at a literal mountain of paperwork. The case volumes are high, client needs are incredibly complex, and frankly, our staff are stretched thinner than ever. I am coming at this as an advocacy manager, and honestly, we are just overwhelmed. The manual workload is literally keeping us away from the very people who need our help the most. It is incredibly frustrating. You build an advocacy practice because you want to support people, right? But then the administration just takes over entirely. As an AI consultant working closely with Australian professional services, I completely get the pressure your teams are under. It is a genuine capacity crisis. So, to validate that frustration, let's look at what is actually possible. That massive 65% you are seeing right there, that is the exact percentage of legal and advocacy professionals using targeted automation who are reclaiming up to 5 hours every single week. Think about that for a second. That is not just some tiny efficiency tweak. That is an entire afternoon handed straight back to your team, giving them the space to focus on actual high-quality client care. Okay, 5 hours sounds brilliant, but as a manager, my absolute first thought is about trust. Can this technology actually safely handle vulnerable client data? Because we are dealing with highly sensitive medical records and financial histories. There is absolutely no way we can just chuck these confidential files into some free public online tool. Yeah, and your instincts are spot on there. If you look at the left side here, using a public offshore tool means your data actually leaves Australia. It could be used to train external models, and you are facing a genuine risk of privilege exposure. It is a massive red flag. But then, look over on the right. Sovereign Australian AI is a completely different story. It relies exclusively on Sydney local zones, it operates in a totally closed environment, and it is strictly compliant with the Privacy Act 1988. When you are dealing with vulnerable clients, data sovereignty isn't just nice to have, it is an absolute mandate. It literally means keeping your client documents locked within a closed, locally governed Australian environment. This fully satisfies the Australian privacy principles, so you know client trust is never going to be compromised. Honestly, if a vendor cannot tell you exactly where your data is being processed, you just shouldn't be using them. And that secure, closed ecosystem is exactly the foundation of Sunny AI. It is an AI operating system designed specifically from the ground up to meet the strict local compliance requirements for Australian law firms, accounting practices, and, of course, advocacy organizations. We see advocacy teams losing hours just chasing fragmented conversation threads across Outlook, their practice management systems, and SharePoint. It's chaos. But Sunny connects all those internal systems into one secure central memory, and it remains 100% Australian hosted. It operates as read-only by default, and every single action gets logged for your compliance audits. Over time, it actually builds a private memory that securely learns exactly how your specific practice operates. Connecting systems is great, sure, but our work is definitely not generic. The NDIS and the Department of Veterans Affairs frameworks, they are incredibly rigid and notoriously complex. So my question is, does this system actually understand Australian advocacy law? Because a standard digital assistant just isn't going to cut it for our team. That is a very fair challenge to make. But the thing is, Sunny effectively arrives on your doorstep having already read that entire stack of legislation you see listed there. From day one, it ships with a standard advocacy pack. It is actively watching the Military Rehabilitation and Compensation Act, the VEA, the NDIS Act. It monitors the DVA CLEC library and all the recent tribunal decisions. It literally knows your regulatory landscape before you even turn it on. Okay, it is definitely reassuring to know the legislation is covered, but I really need a concrete workflow example. What does this actually look like in practice for a real client file, say on a chaotic Tuesday morning? Let's walk through a typical veteran claim process to show you. Step 1 is automated client intake. This is where Sunny securely gathers all those initial details without your staff having to do the manual data entry. Step 2 is policy-mapped case notes. When the DVA click policy inevitably updates, Sunny automatically maps those shifts directly to any of your affected active claims. And then step 3 is referral letter drafting. The system actually drafts the submission based on the current policy. But importantly, your advocate retains total control over the final review and approval. The AI does the heavy reading, but your team applies the expert human judgment. And look, you don't have to just take my word for it. Check out this quote from Kai Baldwin. He's the founder of a veteran-led practice. His biggest takeaway is that legislation changes never get missed anymore. It is allowing his relatively small team to safely do the work of a much larger one, and they are doing it without ever compromising on quality or confidentiality. When you actually map out the concrete time reduction on these complex files, the visual contrast here is pretty staggering. Doing a manual review of a massive medical file or a dense policy document, that takes hours of careful reading. But an AI-assisted review structures that exact same information in minutes. It flags the anomalies for you, it creates plain English summaries, it genuinely frees your staff to get back to focusing on the actual human client sitting across from them. Yeah, that sort of time saving is exactly what we need. However, we are an under-resourced organization. So I have to ask about the practical realities here. How on earth do we implement this when we don't have an internal IT team? Taking on a massive, disruptive technology project is honestly my biggest fear right now. It is such a common concern, but the implementation is highly structured, and I promise you it does not require an internal IT team. Starting on day one, we run what we call an X-ray workshop. This maps out your existing workflows completely before anyone even touches a piece of software. Then by week 2, we do a capability audit and system design, and by week 4, we are managing the active deployment and doing hands-on enablement with your team. The entire approach is built on one core principle: clarity before code, and strategy before software. That initial X-ray workshop is designed to identify exactly where automation is going to create genuine leverage for your specific team. And honestly, just as importantly, it tells you exactly where AI is not going to help at all. We are not here to build technology just for the sake of it. We build it to solve your specific administrative bottlenecks. Makes sense, because if we can actually secure our data and automate all that heavy reading safely, we can support our community so much more effectively. For an advocacy organization, reclaiming that administrative time is literally everything. Absolutely, and I will leave you with a final thought to consider today. Are you ready to stop managing administration and return to actual advocacy? Because the tools to do this securely, they exist right now. I really challenge leaders in this sector to rethink how their operations work. Head over to sunburntii.com.au and take that next step toward building a much more sustainable practice.